I love it.
Yeah, I started this journey about a year ago.
What a cool ass thing to do, dude.
Yeah.
Blessing to have that opportunity.
All right, guys, count. Let me see. Mitchell, you first.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Good.
6.
Okay. David.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Good.
8. Okay.
Christian.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So Mitchell is a little. Both you, David and Christian is loud, and Mitchell is not as loud
He's got a
because
soft
your
voice.
mic is. Can you say it again?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Aaron. And then that can put a David.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
And let
6.
David speak.
All right, David.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
All right, Mitch, you might just need to speak up a little.
Yeah, Mitchell.
You can't turn me up in the headphones?
Turn up my headphones.
Eminem,
Turn up my headphones.
turn me up in the
No, you're
headphone.
good. You're good.
I'm good?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We're recording, we're streaming.
Cool, cool, cool.
Mitchell, David.
Looks like a scotch.
Oh, it does.
Be a wild turn of events.
Most High on relapse.
Somebody, when we first started the show, someone was like, oh, this guy's talking about God? I thought this was going to be a weed show.
Have you ever seen the Most High show? Oh, we.
All right, you got it on me?
Yes.
All right. You're going to put that phone down, I hope.
I'm asking Julie to. Go ahead.
All right, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm going to check for the live. Yep, I see it.
Thank you for coming out, bro.
Yeah. Thanks
Awesome.
for keeping it alive.
Okay, I got to sit up. My gut's like showing too much. 1, 2, 1, 2. My mic sounds nice.
Check one.
We're good. All right. Leslie, got it on me? The hostess with the mostest?
It's been on you, yes.
Of course it's been on me.
You are the man.
All right. Thank God for the opportunity for us to gather together. Thank you for good brothers and friends in life. Thank you for Leslie, and thank you for Rally. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today is a pretty special Most High show because we have our longtime friend and longtime supporter and guest, Mitchell. Mitchell is a mental health advocate. Among many other things, spends his time working with differently abled individuals, one of who is asleep on the couch. His documentary, Chopwood Carry Water, is available on Most High Media. I encourage you to check that out. It's a pretty endearing special. And, of course, David Ja.
Hello,
Cleope.
hello.
Leslie's on the ones and twos. Jolie's doing quality control.
Ah.
And I'm your host, Reverend Christian. So one thing the audience might not know, because it's been a while since Mitchell's been on the show, but how long ago did we start recording, Mitchell, when you and I were doing it? 5 years ago?
When I looked like Jesus,
Yes.
probably 5 years ago.
Your
Yeah.
Jesus days.
Yeah. So we started doing the show, and Mitchell was really influential in us turning to focus more on recovery stories. And for a time, we were recording in the corner of a clubhouse in downtown Atlanta. Those were some cool episodes. We filmed in the wild outdoors, Cash Me Outside.
How about that?
So there's a long history of us doing this, and so it's really cool to have you back in the lab, rocking with us in the new studio.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So today's topic, we're going to try to make it as serious as possible. It is kind of serious, but it is also
serious.
our life. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about balancing mental health, fatherhood, and being a husband. which
Oh, being a husband too. Okay.
you
I was rocking out with the
you
Fatherhood.
Freudian left that. You just read right over
Oh
husband.
no,
It's
I
in the
missed
title.
that one. Okay, cool. All right, let's do it.
And a couple of the reasons for the show, for the topic today. Number one is a dear friend of mine took his life early this summer. He is a father, a husband, and a caretaker, and he struggled silently with his mental health. So this brought about a very real weight into the forefront of my mind that fathers and husbands bear when they don't have support, right? And secondly, in 2021, men died by suicide 3.9 times more than women. On average, there are 132 suicides per day. And white males account for 69% of suicide deaths in 2021.
Wow.
So this is a real 132. That's almost as much as opioid deaths, right? Suicides. So the first question I'm going to ask coming out of the gate is, I want to take us back a little bit because I know all of us have had our bouts with it, but how have your own mental health issues affected you in the past when trying to, quote unquote, keep up? So we'll pass the mic to Mitchell first, see what you got to say.
There seems to be a pendulum swing that some dads, maybe a lot of dads, experience where we want to be very available and we want to spend as much time with our families as possible. However, it becomes obvious if you lean that direction, at least in my experience, that there will be financial sacrifice because you're not working overtime if you're going overtime with your family. And I tend to want to lean that direction. So when I've struggled, typically more so in wintertime, that's a very difficult challenge for me because I want to be there for my family and also take care of myself. But then I also have a harder time embracing not working as much. And so I will just ebb and flow back and forth. And it never quite seems to be the perfect balance. But I think I've perfected it to this point more so than I ever have, and am truly blessed that I'm able to spend a great amount of time with my family and also feel like I'm contributing as well as possible.
Well, I think in your case, too, one of the benefits is be the same for me, being self-employed gives you some flexibility, but there's also an additional weight and pressure to being self-employed, right? Because if you don't hustle it up and then do the work and finish the work, then it's harder to, meet that bottom line. But also, it gives us the opportunity to be flexible when there is a need or we want to be around, right? So that's hard. When I think a lot of guys, they have clock in full-time jobs. You got to be there. You got to show up. You got to perform. No one's really checking if you're having a good mental health day. But David, what about you? How have you found this, like balancing mental health and keeping up?
Are you talking about now or in the past?
In the past, yeah.
Okay. In the past, I think I don't even know. With my first daughter, I didn't know. My mind did not go like, oh, I gotta find balance in anything. You know what I mean? It was all about being caught up in the nostalgia of having my first daughter and loving her so much, and I knew I had to work, and I knew that I felt at that time, the more money I had, the more better off that she would be. Now that being said, I'm also, in the midst of, trying to manage a lot of other things like my addiction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm trying to be a good dad. I'm still living a lifestyle that includes a lot of people, a lot of partying, stuff that didn't fit, being what I would see now as a good father. But I tried my best. I mean, honestly, I was young.
How old were you when you had your first kid?
Let's see, I was 95. I was 23.
All right.
Yeah, when I had my first kid.
Dang, you
And
old.
I was married.
Huh?
And I was married.
And you were married.
Yeah. I was 22. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got married very young too. And the thing with me that we try to have a baby, my first wife and I try to have a baby for a whole year, and we couldn't have a baby. And then we went to a specialist, and they were trying to give us like fertility medicine, and like it was just when we started seeing like these fertility pills, like triplets, quadruplets, and all that kind of stuff coming out. So we didn't decide to go that route, and that ended up happening. While we moved to Florida, and it ended up happening. She got pregnant. My wife got pregnant. My ex-wife got pregnant. So I was kind of caught up in all the excitement. But as time went on, my parenting, being a father, was I got more selfish in my lifestyle, things like that. So balance was never.
Yeah.
Back then, it was never a thing.
Right, and that's when your addiction was pretty rampant and taking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in my addiction, I was so caught up in, I'm this quintessential cokehead, you know what I'm saying? Working in the entertainment industry, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, you know, about that business. I'm working long hours, I'm out of town a lot. I'm like, I'm caught up in that. And so not really seeing the value. And then when I got sober and I got out of rehab, we would start the day at 5 a.m. And then, if you left at 5, 5 p.m., people would look at you. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you leaving already? It was like competition, like who was going to leave last.
Yeah.
Well, when I got sober, I was like, man, I want to be there. Yeah, that chair slides you down when you sit.
Yeah, I
see you.
if I'm in that chair, I'm just slowly
slipping into darkness. But then when I got sober, I was like, I want to be home when my kids get home from school.
Yeah.
So I start the day at 5. Well, I want to leave at 3, right? So that's like, what, a solid day.
Yeah.
But they weren't used to that. And
Well,
so there was a shift all of a sudden because so much of my addiction, they were the priority because they were the money that I could get the drugs with.
Right.
And then once I got sober, it was like my priorities kind of shifted. And so the dynamic in that office for me started to shift.
When you had Jolie, did you think about, I got to balance my life out because I have my first child?
No, I was 23 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and Leslie left Bakersfield and moved to Los Angeles.
What?
She wanted to raise a kid by herself. She's like, you can follow if you want to.
You had to go chasing her. Okay.
But yeah, I don't think I even attempted balance until sobriety. Right?
What about your first daughter?
I had my first daughter several years sober, 2 years sober maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's like to do what you're talking about.
Mm.
And
well, I'm talking about balance though. Like where you're like, okay, this is my first kid.
Oh yeah.
I've got to prioritize. Like, okay, I got to make a schedule that's workable for my family versus my work life, my social life and stuff like that.
Yeah, at the time I had her, it seemed pretty easy. I was working nonprofit. Her mom worked in the nonprofit. She was at the daycare at the nonprofit. So I didn't really struggle with that balance. It was more so almost built in for me to be a very available, present, interactive father for the first year.
Like, was it what you learned in your 2 years of sobriety? Like, were you like really hot on those types of things implementing in your life, like being a sober dad?
I think it's part of my disposition. I think I would have been dedicated as a father at some level if I was in active addiction. It sounds like you guys are in a similar category. But I was blessed, and it's been kind of magical being a father.
Yeah.
Kids having only seen me sober.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a polar opposite for me.
Yeah.
I mean, like me being a sober dad, it's a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your kids call you out sometimes on some of that stuff, don't they?
All the time.
Yeah.
My older ones, like if I approach them in a way, they're like, Dad, don't talk to me like that. Do not. You got counselor voice.
Oh.
You're talking counselor talk. Don't. Or like, Dad, especially at the beginning, like, Dad, don't. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long have I've known you for 20-some years right now. Stop playing around.
Right. Right.
So it's hard. It was hard that change of my life wasn't. You would think, oh, I'm living better now. Here we go. Here's me now, and they're like, nah.
Yeah. Yeah. My oldest was 10 when I got sober, so she had seen some of the stuff,
Yeah.
And but the other kids were so young, they're like 5 or 6, so they don't know how much they were aware of everything that was going on. But I think that it'd be interesting to look at the stat and see like the age breakdown of what those are, right? Like I do think that kind of all three of us right now are in a phase, like if you think of, life developmentally, we're on this, we're not quite at our second phase of life, but we're kind of rounding out the first phase of our life, being our age and kind of like the way we're starting to approach
A lot of
things.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder if there's extra added pressure because, when you're in your 20s, there's kind of you don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, you just kind of going, right? So I wonder if these stats, if the trend is a little higher on the age for some of the men.
That's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. What you looking at me for like that?
I'm just trying to process what you're saying.
Yeah.
I would imagine that probably my guess would be between 30 and 40 would be the most suicides
Yeah.
per capita. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but
Let's look it up. Let's do a little Google on this.
Well, I know for me, 30 and 40 was probably my worst parenting
Really?
ever during that time. Yeah.
What do you think that was?
My addiction was probably at its worst. My lifestyle was at its worst. Like my care for things, living very selfishly, and I had a lot of children. I had kids where like I was like, I don't know. I think there was some sort of acceptance that I'm just not going to do this well. I'm not going to be that guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just I went to, let me see, when did I go to prison? I went to prison. The last time I went to prison, I was 34.
Yeah.
I think maybe 35 or something like that.
So it says here the rate of suicide is highest in middle-aged men.
so 40 to 50, 40 to 60.
Yeah.
Okay. I was a decade off.
Yeah. But I still think it is that kind of second phase of life.
I think developmentally, I think I'm a little bit behind the curve because of my lifestyle. So like, in a lot of ways, fatherhood a lot of fatherhood is new to me. I have a 7-year-old right now that my approach or my learning, the way I comprehend things, my determination of what I want to do is on a whole different plane. And my relationship, like my older kids are a huge priority to me. Even though there's 2 under my roof right now, the other ones it's like I have a schedule with them to stay in contact, keep communication open, make sure that I'm impactful. Like I try my best to be proactive in making an impact in each of their lives, being present in their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I mean by keep up. I think that, and what Mitchell's point was, like, it's like you have to make that a priority, but then you also got this other thing, as a priority, whatever you do professionally as a priority, and then we're all 3 in recovery, so our recovery is also a priority.
Yeah.
Then you have your life partner, right, which is also a priority, and so there's these like competing priorities, right, and so it's easy, at least in my case, the first thing that's easiest to slip off is that self care, is that component, right? That because I can just go, I'm fine. I don't need to make a meeting today, or it's been a busy day. I don't feel like talking to my sponsor, or I don't feel like making a call. I'm fine, and that's usually the case. But if I go too long without those check-ins, I'll notice my mental state begins to drift toward oblivion. You know what I mean? And I think it's like keeping up that's where it kind of gets to be hard. You know what I mean? So I've talked to my father about this, and my dad was saying, he equates it like this. He says, Christian, you're in a phase of life now where my kids are all, 16, 17, 23, 22. You're in a phase of life where everything's kind of a little more expensive. Everyone's pulling at you right now, but that's just the season that you're in, and it won't always be like that. And so that helps me keep perspective of like, I can't wait till these fools move out, what I'm saying?
This is too much money. Somebody needs a job.
All right, let's see. What's the next question here? Yeah, sorry, Kale. You can be editing this one. So I kind of touched on this. What tools, healthy or unhealthy, have you used personally to cope with pressure?
So historically, as a sober dad and husband, which is all I know, I've oscillated back and forth between having a set of healthy practices, going to the gym, making sure I'm going to my meetings, yoga comes and goes, and then it's very easy for me to get into a slippery slope where I back off on that stuff, especially in the winter. Next thing you know, I'm using nicotine, and that never works well for me. So I haven't used nicotine since my son was born, so we're at about 3 years now, and I think I've
All right.
kind of leveled out. It was a rough year or two coming off
Do
that.
you want to tell them how you use nicotine, though?
No, I don't use nicotine like a gentleman, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
But I
Because
have
it's a great story if you wanted to tell it.
no. I have the most unhealthy relationship
Dude,
with
now I'm
nicotine that
sweating.
I've ever seen anybody have, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not for me. I think everybody around me is better off because I have taken that off the list of things that I use to cope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so right now I'm in a routine of yoga average once a day and gym a couple times a week. And I get a lot of meditation through the yoga and really a lot of family time and time for some artistic endeavors has come back into play, which has been really wonderful. So a lot of that's just because of the season I'm in, and the way that things are going for my family is really conducive to my feeling as blessed as I've ever felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm enjoy that while it lasts.
Right. Yeah.
That's good.
We got a few more months of sun.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. What about you, David? What unhealthy coping mechanisms have you had to try to deal with the pressure? And maybe in recovery.
Yeah. I think in terms of like unhealthy, I don't know if I do a really good job at balancing and coping. Really, I try to, just like Mitchell said, I don't know if anything is as consistent as it should be as far as what I consider, healthy coping mechanisms to, to move forward as a parent and a husband. I know right now in my life, I think I'm really unbalanced in the time that I spend with my wife. I think that we're very child focused, which we've both like, and we both accepted that, but we both acknowledge that there's not enough us time. So that's something I'm working on. As far as like unhealthy coping mechanisms, I I drink a ton of coffee, I vape, I stay up too late, to
Doom
get things
scrolling?
done. I'm scrolling, and I'm up early, you know what I mean, mostly every day. So like my mood is probably isn't the best at times. I feel like I work myself until like I can't do it
Yeah.
a lot. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I got to stop, and then I go to sleep, kind of. But again, but that being said, I don't think I've ever had balance like this good in my life. So
Right.
that might sound very weird, but as far as time at home, I've never had in my life this much time at home. You know what I mean? And I try to take advantage of that. I try to, like, it's probably unhealthy too. I take that, like, I'm always trying to kill, like, two birds with one stone. Like, my idea is to go out into the woods, which I do. I'm in the forest every week, right? And I'm like, okay, I want to do some self care in this, but I'm fitting it in with father daughter time with my animals. You know what I mean? Now we're climbing Stone Mountain every week. So, it's a family thing. So it's like, okay, I'm trying to do I'm trying to jumble a lot of healthy things in one action. So I don't think that's very well balanced.
Sounds like you're doing great.
Well, thank you.
Well, yeah, like this is again, like this is just we're
Yeah.
talking at it at a level, just because it's hard to kind of compare like someone's unhealthy habits to what we might say is unhealthy. But I think we're always just it's human nature to kind of want to be progressing in some way, right? Kind of. So I think it's like an inventory or sense of our lives. And saying,
Sure.
all right, here's where I could kind of, like I'll tell you, like for me, what it is I'll get overwhelmed, and what I'll get overwhelmed with because I'm running the ministry and the business and the household stuff, I will get overwhelmed like with finances, and kind of wondering how am I going to make this happen? How am I going to do this? And then when I get overwhelmed, I shut down, right? So then I'm not taking the right action to achieve the goals that I've set for myself, and I'm kind of like hiding away. And so hiding away for me might be, doom scrolling or watching a show, or just not really engaged at a very efficient way, right? And so, and I've like what I've given myself is permission on occasion to do that, right? So when the day is like that and I am overwhelmed and I'm at that place, to me it's much healthier for me to just like take the foot off the gas completely, even if the car slows all the way down. That's more healthy than me keep trying to push, because when I try to push, it'll lead me to frustration, resentment, and anger. And then then I start creating chaos for those around me, And so I've had to learn when the car's slowing down. It feels like in the last 2 years I've slowed down a lot. And there's a concept called slow down to speed up. So as I've slowed down, my moves are more intentional. So when my moves are more intentional, they're a little more effective. It's more efficient.
Better.
Yeah. And I can't say any of that without saying, like, there's this God grace in my life, right? This blessed component of, like, there are things happening for me that I have no control over, right? That I just get to receive things working out in a way when I just kind of slow down. And that's been my approach to, but I can, I could take anything and take it to an extreme. I don't drink Pepsi responsibly. So,
I know that for me, when I get through a week and I see what I did, I know the only way it happened is because God's allowing it or God did it. Like I'm like, damn, how can I do this like consistently? You know what I mean? I mean, just with Olive alone, that's a
and
lot.
that's your youngest daughter. It's
Yeah,
your
my
7-year-old.
youngest daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound like I'm like bragging on myself, but like, during this time, like I have a daughter that's like going to just drove all the way to New Mexico, or she flew down there the first time. I helped her, like she never got on a plane, so I'm like, FaceTiming her to get on it. I'm good. She's like coming up with all this. She's never traveled across the country. She's already put more time on the road than I did, but I was there for her, like, and I prioritized that. I have a daughter, I have 2 daughters in Pennsylvania. One just got married, doing that new married thing. And my second daughter is like, doing her life, has a boyfriend that they're moving forward with. Aja is, fixing up a lot of stuff in her life. And I'm very involved in those things. Like, my most strained relationship with my daughter in Las Vegas, it's strained, but it's better than it's ever been at the same
That's
time. So,
if you weren't counting, that's 6 daughters.
and well, check this out. I have a stepdaughter. That's my oldest. Is really the first one that I've ever had anything to do with like that kind of role.
Yeah.
And Sierra, God bless her, she's been clean now, I think going on 6 years. All right. And I love her to death. And like I've been able to even have little conversation about her first time getting on a plane and her paranoia with that. So I love being involved. But when I get to the end of all that and knowing that I'm a participant in those things, I'm like, gee, God, that was God, man. Like, and when I reflect that, I was like, dude, like, just for my brain to have a piece of all that, it's like a blessing from God that I'm able to do that today. You know what I mean?
God doing for you what you can't do for yourself.
Amen. For real.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about this kind of idealistically.
Okay.
What do you think is at the core of these struggles for the family man? What do you think is like at the core? And again, now this is taking into account like these men who get to this place where suicide is a viable option, right? Which, I'll say for myself, like in recovery, I've had those moments where, that's how tough things were that I thought that was the only way out, right? I've had those feelings and those thoughts. So what do you think is at the core of that for men? If it's happening at this kind of 132 a day, what do you think is at the core of that?
I think it's a result of the way society is structured currently. I think social media plays a part in it. I think back to when, Little House on the Prairie, you had some cows, you had some chickens, you had a family, they went to school. I think as long as the animals were taken care of, you had water, there wasn't a whole lot to really obsess over. But now you can find endless amounts of things at your fingertips to obsess over that are terrifying if you want. And I think just the societal climate right now is very conducive to disordered behavior. And so I think it's not surprising when people abuse drugs. I'm not surprised when people take their life.
Yeah. I think too that one of the things with our access to information is it's really easy to get caught into a comparison where we're comparing in a Little House on the Prairie kind of style. Your neighbors,
Billy, he's well on. How's he doing? How's that boy doing? He's about 3 farms
he
down.
got a new buffalo. You see Terry's new
that
buffalo?
hog?
That hog? They're going to eat good this winter. Right, so it's like we're constantly can be exposed to, or I think we fall into that trap of like where you see people who are quote unquote successful, right? And so it's natural to kind of go, ooh, I'd like to. How do I get to that point, right? And that comparison. There are some studies about how if you look at when the more advanced a society becomes, there's a correlation between that and the suicide rates. So like Rome at the height of their civilization, there was a lot of suicide rates. And some of that might be because of that comparison and kind of some of that like unattainable stature that people can see that they know they just can't meet, right? But what about for you, Dave? What would you think is at the core of it?
Well, I think speaking for men in general, there's always this wanting to be like seriously successful, and I think in the midst of the struggle of working yourself like that, I think there's always a space for disappointment. Okay, and then as you're like struggling to like get the bag and be successful, or what you would see as successful, you see as you're getting there, you're also seeing where you fall short. And like, for me personally, it's really easy for me to feel shameful and guilty. Like especially, being in addiction and being in recovery, if if I make Olive feel bad, right? There's a tinge of that gives me like that. It flashes all the guilty things that I've been guilty through my whole life with all my kids. Even when I see her do well, right? I'm like, damn, I didn't offer that opportunity. I didn't. That was great. That was awesome. I didn't. When I see her be successful, I feel the guilt of not offering, giving my older daughters that opportunity. So, but in speaking on men in general, I think guilt and shame is something that happens to men, not living up to par. The comparison that you see in social media today, when you see somebody be successful, or if comparing yourself to your friends, you know what I mean? You see your friend doing very well while you're struggling. It doesn't make you feel better that they're doing well.
Right.
You know what I mean? It kind of exposes where you may be falling short.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, I think that's for a lot of men, that's hard to deal with. A person that feels like a bad dad. Okay, and that's a tough feeling to feel.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
because you feel like the weight of that is it's like unforgivable.
It is. It's shame at its
feeling, yeah.
best. Yeah.
I went to a funeral for a guy a few years ago, and he was a spiritual teacher, and he was well aware of his death date. He knew that he was going to have a death date, and one of the things he did was he made his own video to play at his funeral.
That's wild.
Wild, right? And so it was at a big church. I mean, it's probably 500 people there, mostly men, because his ministry was working with men. And if you were ever to work with this guy, his name was Reggie Joyner. If you were to work with this guy, this was going to be one of the exercises, right? It's for you to kind of picture your funeral. What's that like, right? And this concept of like, who's in the front row of your funeral, and how we live our life focused on the people who might not even come, or the people in the back row. And then we don't really take into account who's that first row, right? And so that was really an impactful moment for me, because I think that when it started to change the way I made decisions about my life and the way I've structured my life, to where I think, all right, I'm not constantly thinking about my death, although no more than any other alcoholic is constantly thinking about their death. But
All the time.
so, but knowing that, okay, like, will this ultimately result in that first row being served, right? Because that's the stuff that matters, right? Those stuff that, like, if you ever get like really sick, half the shit you were worrying about, you're not even tripping on anymore, right? You just want your body back, So that was a really impactful moment to help me to start to and in a lot of ways, I am living the life that I've designed, because I do have a lot of margin, and that's intention, right? So let's see, what's the next question? Anybody have a comment on that?
What David was saying was the other part of what I was thinking, but didn't articulate. And basically, not only do we have this social media concept where there's never-ending amounts of information that are coming our way, and we tend to not always absorb or focus on the most healthy things, but there's this element of comparison now that's ever present in people's lives. And for men, it's what he was saying, that you're basically got to choose what you're going to be guilty and ashamed about. Are you going to be guilty and ashamed about not spending enough time with your family because you're providing as much as you can for them? Or are you going to be at home more and then feel guilty that they don't have the things or the lifestyle maybe that some of the people around them or that they're observing have? Yeah. And for me, I've had to really focus on my truth, which is I'm going to try to find the middle ground, but I'm going to err on the side of being with my family, because at the end of the day, I think about what people's reports on their deathbed are, and you never hear people say they wish they would have worked more. So I know that, and
Yeah.
I'm going to lean the way that feels right to me.
Yeah.
Very smart.
And like for context, like people who might not know, I mean, you're running a pretty successful business.
Damn
Where
right.
you're doing lawn care, tree maintenance. What is this?
Property management.
We do that. We do
Yeah,
that.
we
too.
do that too.
We do that too. And you have a crew of full-time employees that you're running and managing, and so. For you to be making this decision to kind of how do I shift this and move this, it's a big move, substantial kind of mindset shift for you to do that. And I think that's a result of recovery too, because there's some other men that I know, highly successful, who I see them do the same thing. They're making these moves that they have margin, that where they could maybe make progress quicker, instead they'll invite a bunch of addicts to come do the work instead and spend time with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they go and spend time in their farm and they got a bunch of addicts in there and they're helping them get sober, right? So it's like, I think recovery.
Shout out Kirk.
Yeah, and Dean, right? Like,
Yeah, Dean,
I think the 12 steps have really informed all of our lives in that way. Puts these things in perspective. Like, it becomes, our lives are not really so much about us anymore, right? How do we leverage that?
I think about that a lot. I think if let's say I never got, I don't know, never suffered from substance abuse, right? And I just went along being a dad. I don't think I would even be thinking about this topic even. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't be like, I wonder if I'm balancing my life good.
Right.
I wonder where I've struggled at before. I would just keep doing life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And whatever was, I guess, shown to me through my life, for whatever influences, is how I would have carried on.
Well, that's a great point. Like complacency, right? Comfort. I think comfort kills a lot of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because, and so and some of the men that I've worked with who don't have a substance abuse issue, what I hear commonly is, I don't have a sense of purpose. Like, I know I'm a dad, I know I'm a husband, and that's meaningful to me, but I don't have a larger sense of purpose, right? And I think because I have this 12-step framework, I have a larger sense of purpose, right? I think it's also what religion could offer you, is a larger sense of purpose. And
Spirituality.
but when you don't feel like a sense of purpose beyond just your kind of nuclear family, and maybe you don't get the feedback you want from them, it could become very isolating, I think. Yeah?
Yeah. I think what I'm trying to say, I was very ignorant. If I wouldn't have went through the life that I lived and got to a place where, like, God meant something, you know what I mean? Serving meant something. Being present means something.
Right.
Being mindful means something. Those things don't really make an impact on me unless unless I've worked the program.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless those are the things that stick out: acceptance, surrender, all these like life skills that you learn from being in recovery, and the value brings value to things that should have value in your life, primarily your kids and your wife and your family.
Yeah. It's a gift and the curse, right?
Yeah.
What up?
Can you introduce who's like?
Oh, so
Oh.
Mitchell, will you please introduce your friend Raleigh?
Raleigh, can you say hey? Raleigh, can you say hey for everybody that's watching you on TV?
Hey.
So Raleigh and I have been hanging out for about a decade now.
This is my
And
first time meeting Raleigh in person, but I know of him.
Raleigh is one of my favorite people. So I am blessed to be able to spend 2 to 4 days a week supporting Raleigh
It's awesome.
and making sure he's got whatever he needs. And that's not a life that I ever knew I wanted. And it's kind of amazing that I've ended up here because the good orderly direction that I've subscribed to led me to a place where I found things I never knew
Yeah.
would fulfill me. And if you would have asked me 12 years ago what I wanted, it would not have been very wholesome. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we all
Well said.
rocking the same amount of recovery?
We're pretty much right there. David is about to say he's got more time than us.
What about Raleigh? Raleigh, how long you been sober? What? 2?
2? Okay. Good job.
2 lifetimes? I don't think Raleigh's ever had a drink.
Well, you're coming up on 12. I'm coming up on 12.
Oh, okay. Young boys.
Which is a very surreal place to be because there's not a lot of people with double-digit sobriety. You know, when you got a year sober, there's a ton of people around. You can find someone with 3-5 years pretty easy
Right.
to look toward. But now, you know, so many people around us die and relapse and go to prison.
Wow.
There's a very small few number of people I can call that have been where I'm at.
Yeah.
And that's a scary place to be. It's like going to space.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and then, one thing about Mitchell and I talk daily, and I think part of it is because we're kind of at that same sobriety. And you're a little ahead, Dave, but you ain't that far ahead, so you
No.
ride with us.
Yeah, I'm right with you. We're all the same.
But I do think it's a different conversation you and I will have than it would be if I'm having a conversation with someone who's got like a year.
Oh,
right?
it's totally different,
Yeah.
man. You're not going to be. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you're big brothering. The whole, no matter how you put it, somewhere,
Yeah.
even though you're meeting them eye level, you're like,
Yeah.
listen.
I want to
listen,
show you
yeah.
enough that you know that I'm real, but
Yeah.
not so much that you know how crazy I really
Yeah,
am.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's a paradoxical place to be because if you would have asked me 12 years ago if I did all these things to get where I am, I would have thought life would have been pretty much bliss. And I found that it's been one of the most difficult periods of my life because
Yeah.
it's there's a lot on the line and there's not too many people who can tell me how to do it.
Wow.
Yeah, well said. Yeah,
Very
I
true.
heard someone say that I didn't suffer alcoholism until I stopped drinking.
I was pretty happy for the most part when I was using. I didn't struggle as much as I struggled these last 12 years. In ways, certainly,
Sure.
there were worse moments, but because I was numbing myself, for the most part, I was a pretty happy individual.
Yeah,
Now, like I get moments of happiness,
yeah,
but I can't plan them.
right,
They come when they come.
right.
But they're more amazing now.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I wouldn't hear that unless I talked to someone who's got a decade or more of recovery. I
Right.
wouldn't hear those words. And when I heard that, it gave me so much peace because I realized, okay, I'm not like off par. Like this is the process, right? Because we begin to have to start dealing with life, right? All right, so let's see. Let's talk about anger a little bit. Anger is something I learned at a young age, probably from my father at the time was alcoholic, that anger could be used to control a room.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, yelling and, showing your anger. So how do you manage anger today? What tools have you found to help you manage that?
So for me, I have found that anger is my least desirable trait in myself. And it's the trait I'm most disturbed by. And so I go to great lengths to get ahead of that mind state. And what I mean by that is when I'm able to live a year like I've lived this last year, which has been one of my best, I've really leaned into my self-care to the point where I'm very unlikely to act in my most extreme form, which is being a very abrasive human. So now, if I'm living in that way, I'm able to see it coming better because I've got the resources to handle it. And typically, I can walk away, I can bite my tongue, I can call someone, I can go do something else while that feeling subsides. But I'm also not putting myself in as many positions to be angry.
Yeah. I think of it, it kind of sounds like, you know, if you were to walk into a room and you see something on the ground and you think it's a black snake, right? And you're scared of snakes, so you kind of freak out and you jump, right? So your nervous system picks up and your energy's really high, right? And then you open the drawer or someone comes in and says something to you, your threshold, you're not far from your threshold. And so then you can pop, right? Or you open the drawer and you think you see an extension cord and now because you're in a heightened state, right? And I think of that like if we're kind of constantly running at 7, it doesn't take much to get us to a 9, right? So if the pressures of financial stresses, of trying to live up to ideals that either we create or society creates or whatever, and we're doing that, we're running at a 7, then it's not going to take much to get us to a 9.
Very true. That's good. I like
But it sounds like you found a way to get you down to where you're running at a 3 or a 4, and so when life happens, you're not tipping over to that overflow of anger. And I would say that's probably the way it works for me too, right? Not to say that I won't get pissed off if I can't find a freaking lid to a pot, but you know, it is what it is. You know,
It
for the
is
most
what
part,
it is.
it's manageable, right? But I don't think most people know they're running at a 7 or an 8. I just don't think most men. I can see it when I sit with someone. I can see it. I can see, man, you need a hug and a nap, you know,
And a sandwich.
and a sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I know almost first conversation with both of you, I knew you guys ran a little high.
Yeah.
Me?
And it was a good good conversation. You know what I mean? But I just know you guys run a little high. I don't know, like kind of like what I do for a living. I know when somebody like is kind of like low, you know what I mean? For like they run a low temp, and it's where it leans towards a steady depression type of state. You know what I mean? But yeah, I knew you guys ran high when I first met you.
So what about you? What have you found helps you, and I'm assuming, that most men have the ability to use anger to control. I just, whatever it is. Do you have that? And what do you do to manage that?
I think I've been taught culturally to really stuff all that. So I hold a lot of it in. You know what I mean? So if you want to see me angry, I'm not expressing myself. I'm quiet. I'm trying to work it out. You know what I mean? And it doesn't come off like, you don't see it really. You know what I mean? Even I can, have a laughing conversation, but I'm upset. I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's managing it. I don't really like that. I do like to talk about it. I like to express, when I feel, that uneasiness that kind of like takes up my ability to be here. Like if something makes me mad, I'm not here. If I'm really mad about something, I'll go through this whole thing, but I'm not really here.
Yeah.
I'm there with that, either trying to figure it out or.
But
like
you're internalizing it.
I'm internalizing it all the way.
Yeah. David, I don't think you'll mind if I share this about you, but David and I talk often too, and it takes about 20 minutes for a phone conversation for us before he'll reveal what's like.
Oh yeah, we're not like that.
No, we're not like that. No, when Mitchell and I call each other, by the first word. Yeah. But David takes a while to get. We got to go through all the surface stuff and all the laughing, and then he'll finally. It's like
This mother.
right. Then he finally lets it out. So
I don't think that's healthy. But number one, I don't think it's healthy to. It might make things a little bit more manageable, your day a little bit more manageable, but I know that I've got to like let it out. Like, dude, just the other day I was so pissed off and I was like, okay, I'll wait till Christian's coming to lunch.
Yes.
And whenever
3
we
days.
get that moment,
Yes. In 3
I'm
days
gonna
later.
let him know what the hell has been going on with me.
Right.
Then he like texts me, "Hey man, not gonna make it." And I was like, "Damn, all right, I'll hold it in." Just like, listen, man, are you busy? Let me
Yeah.
tell you what's going on.
And then you had to let it out.
Yeah,
Right. As
maybe I
opposed
should have a
to-
larger network of, I don't think I really right at this moment. I think you're enough to decompress with, but I think it's healthy to have a lot more outlets to speak that kind of talk to, especially when you're frustrated and
Yeah.
you hold it in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we had our conversation, it was like, okay, well, it was Wednesday when we were talking, and everything you were talking about was on Saturday, and I was thinking, my phone worked on Saturday, but
Yeah, I think I try to plan it. It's like it's really weird.
yeah.
It's really weird.
No, but that's
yeah.
self knowledge, and you
Yeah.
understand that about yourself. And I think that probably, and you didn't say it, but you have a Korean heritage,
Yeah.
right?
So that's us very handle all your anger like that.
Yeah.
Culturally, men really, unless it's like grief, then I'm a sensitive dude, right? I cry easy. So if it's something like that, that emotion is easy for me to let out, whether it be sentimental, sad, all that. But anger and frustration is a whole different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I totally understand that. I'm married to a Filipino. So
Yeah.
very similar. Stoic. All right. Yeah. So we're figuring out how to kind of deal with it, how to manage it. Acknowledging it's there, I think, is the first step, right? Awareness that you have it, and then having that network of individuals that we can lean on to talk about it, right? So, like, I think that's what Mitchell and I's relationship has become, where it's like, rather than yelling at the person I'm mad at, I call and I can yell with Mitchell, and then, because I know he understands, and then when we get off the phone call, I'm usually pretty back, okay,
You did it.
cool.
Yeah,
Got
yeah.
it out. Wouldn't you say that?
It's very helpful
Yeah.
and healthy.
Mitchell's shaking his head if you're just listening.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about it's just making me want to ask you guys, like, where do you right now in this, like, I think you guys are doing a good job being a father and husbands right now, from what I know and from what I see, right? Where is your struggles at?
Behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Around the people that I love the most.
Yeah.
That's where you're struggling the most.
Yeah.
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 What is it? Is it in the relationships of that? Is it in the is it all that in the communication of it? Is it like a day by day life with them? Or, is it anything in particular that you can put your finger on? Is like in the dynamics of the people I love the most, I struggle because of.
Well, right now it's pretty lovely, but consistently for years, typically when I've gone through this process that we're talking about, where it's like not enough time. All right, let me pull back from work. All right, now there's not enough money. Let me work harder. And there's constant back and forth when I'm getting tugged back and forth by society in that way, which is, probably all in my head. When I'm at home struggling with something, that's where I'm more likely to show it, and probably not in the most ideal way. So I'll be abrasive. And that's something I've really tried to cultivate to avoid doing that. But for whatever reason, that's been my struggle.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, we'll be nice to our client that's pissing us off. Very polite. And
Most of the
cordial.
time.
Most of the time.
There's a couple of them.
Sometimes.
There's a couple of them that got the
Gotta
business.
get the smoke, right?
You got to try real hard.
Yeah. But then it's easier to let those kind of emotions out and maybe even carry them over into those relationships.
Well, yeah, because in a way, your significant other, if they understand you, they kind of understand it. But if you're in business or in a professional environment, those people are less likely to understand, and that could affect your livelihood to take care of these people you care about so much. So that's a strange dynamic.
It is an amazingly strange dynamic because ideally the people you love the most, you cherish the most, right? But what happens is there's especially when it comes to anger and like being abrasive, they're the easiest target, man. They're the safest target to do though, to act out that way. You don't feel like you have the if you love them the most, they probably love you the most. So unfortunately, in that dynamic,
feel like
those
that's-
people get the other side of you easier than somebody that you don't know, that you might have a risk of some shit like money or something like that, or your job or something like that, or performing well. But that's the asshole.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you go, okay, go, cool, all right, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
dig it.
Yeah.
And your wife says, hey, what's for dinner? I don't know, fucking know. I make dinner every fucking day this week. The fuck, man? You know what I'm saying? Like, damn, dude, that was misdirected, man. So there is something like a taking for granted of something. It's an easier thing to.
I kind of see it like Animal Planet. Someone's narrating and they're like, oh, the human being behaves so well in a social situation, and then they get in their nest and they're
Yeah, it's great. I love
great.
that.
Yeah. One thing that's helped me a lot is expanding my network of men who are further along, who are in a similar situation, i.e., married with children. My sponsor is not married. He doesn't have any children. So he can give me very objective insight because he doesn't have those ties. But doesn't always understand the level. But when I talk to someone who's maybe a little further along and I explain, here's what I'm stressed out about, and they're like, oh, yeah, me too. And this might be somebody who I might think, okay, you're successful, you have a great relationship, all that stuff, but you're dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. And I think that's such a key, it's such a powerful thing when we reflect ourselves back to another person. And that thing, whatever that thing is, right? Like that sense of like connection, being understood for me, I think is a big thing about that. Knowing that someone understands me, kind of like with your situation, knowing I can have this conversation with someone who's going to get it as soon as I start talking about it.
It's worth saving.
It's worth saving.
To me, at least.
And I think I think that's probably like one of the things at the heart of the issue is I think men don't have those kinds of relationships. We do because we have the gift of recovery.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so essential for us to not burn everything down, to have these real authentic relationships. But I don't think a lot of men haven't experienced enough pain to feel like, okay, it's worth me being vulnerable and transparent with a couple guys that I could really open up to about this kind of stuff. And so instead it's internalized and it manifests in things like drinking or strip clubs or, unhealthy behaviors or buying fancy toys that you never really should be buying.
Well, that's the frustration. That's the fear of, like, that's why I would consider the way that I usually handle my frustration and anger in the way that I do. It's like I am acknowledging that to myself when I go through these things, that this isn't really healthy. If you're not expressing this anger in a productive way, in a way that you're being heard and you're letting somebody know, your chances of relapsing have just heightened. So every time I'm mad, just because I got clean time in, right? I got some time in. It's maybe not up here, but I know just logically that if I'm letting this frustration eat my lunch and I'm letting that resentment kind of sit in me, my chances of relapsing are going here. You see what I'm saying? Depending on what it is. I mean, I'm a human being, dude, and I know how to escape shit because of my past. I know how to get rid of this shit quickly.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Which could be a form of suicide in its own way.
Maybe,
right?
yeah. Could be the reasons for a lot of suicides.
All right, what about this? Self-care is care for others. Have you guys heard that before?
Well, in yoga, we talk about a ripple effect where even just this morning, the yoga instructor said something to the effect of be grateful that you dedicated this time to yourself this morning because everybody you interact with today is going to be better off because of what you're doing for yourself right now.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. So when we are caring for ourselves, it's putting us in a position to be better caretakers, right? To serve better, to show up better for our families, and that's a hard concept to get for I think for a lot of guys, you know, and also what they would consider self care, you know, and that's where it's easy to kind of think, well, this is my self care. My self care used to be, you know, cocaine and a bottle of bourbon. You know, I thought I was caring for myself. I work hard.
This
I
is my
party
time.
hard.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is my
my
time
time.
right
I'm going
here.
to sit alone in this room and make beats and just get obliterated. And that's what I thought I was caring for myself, right? But it wasn't, not at all. And so I think we can get trapped in these things that we think are quote unquote self care, and they're not. But if we are truly caring for ourselves in a healthy way, that's usually involves some sort of community, some sort of reflection back, because I have blind spots, right? There are blind spots in my life I don't see. And so if I don't have enough, and I'm not talking about 20, but a handful of real, authentic, deep relationships that I can lean on that can point those things out sometimes, right? Like, how many times I've been on the phone with either of you guys, and it's obvious that I'm the one being the asshole because you're gently telling me.
Yeah, but
Well, Mitchell's not so gentle, but David, you're very gentle about it.
Why don't you just chill out, bro? It's not that serious. God, you take things so serious.
I told him that one time. I never heard.
I'm
it.
like, oh, okay. Call me in a week. All right.
That's
I
yeah,
got
right.
something for you.
Well, you know, what's amazing is like, you know, we're not sick at the same day, right? And if we are, it's actually a funny conversation. But most of the time, if I'm in a place where I'm like, I need that support, I need an anchor. These relationships are those anchors. It's just rare that I call somebody and they're like, I'm overwhelmed. I can't help you right now.
right, somebody is going to listen to you.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be there for you.
Yeah. And like for my buddy who took his life, you know, earlier this year, it's like he kind of fell away from those kind of relationships, you know, and having that outlet. And I, to Mitchell's point about, I'm not surprised, right? Because I totally understand how someone could get to a place in your life where it's like, this is the only option. I can't continue at this rate, at this pace. I can't make things work. I keep messing things up. I'm not doing good enough here. And then that thought process spirals, and now everything is tainted with this.
Yeah,
You know, you guys know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
And so without these environments to be able to release that, you know, it's easy to fall into those traps. So in closing it up, what would you guys say to someone who might have been listening to this and is in similar situations as us, and they're looking for a healthy way out, right? What would you say to somebody in that spot?
Who you asking first?
Whoever wants to go.
I think if somebody is struggling with like some of the topics that we talked about that could cause that kind of struggle to where you would think and fathom taking your own life, number one, there are emergency hotlines to call that work. I've been eyewitness to those things. I've never used them, but I've been on the other line and seen somebody get, talked off the ledge. All right. Now, if this is something that's a lingering thought in you, and you're in this place where you're having these ideations, right, where this is a continuing thing going on in your head, please find somebody to talk to about it. Whoever it is, just to let that out of your mouth, and hoping that it goes to a place where you can get help. I would suggest, like, counseling, man. You know what I mean? Dude, I'm telling one of the best things I've seen work for people that have those types of thoughts is group therapy, especially for younger people. I think that what happens in that audience and that interaction of understanding each other on that level, because when they speak to me, I mean, it's like, what do you mean? You're just tired. You know what I mean? And then when it gets articulated through them with each other, when they relate to each other in that way, that's a healer, bro. But I don't know if I'm answering the question, but that these are the things that come to mind to me that I've seen and experienced. I've had people call me that hurt, and I think after the conversation that we had together, it has been helpful. Talking.
Yeah, reach out. How about you, Mitchell?
Yeah, all that. I think succinctly, the best way I can put it is either ask for help from the people you trust the most, or in my case, accept the help that people are obviously
That's good.
probably offering some of us. So when I accepted the help was when I tapped into an endless amount of resources that I never knew were there to fulfill me and to carry me. And it's almost like digging a well to an aquifer. You don't really understand how much can come from that well until you've got it. And once it's there, it's limitless, and it's carried me countless times through very dark periods that had nothing to do with me using drugs and alcohol, because it had been years.
Yeah. Tap in.
Tap
and
in.
receive it and accept it.
Accept it. Wow, that's big, dude. I love that.
So listen, if you've been listening to the show, I just want to say that we need you to survive. We love you. We don't know you right now, but we need you to survive. So stick around for one more day. There's the national hotline. I believe it's 988. You can call if you're seeking help. And you never know a neighbor, a friend who might really show up for you in a time of need. And so you don't have to suffer alone, because you're not alone. And I think this whole conversation has hopefully exposed that from three guys who I think, are pretty healthy and living pretty good lives, but you can hear that we have all struggled, and we all still do.
Still do, yeah.
And so you're not alone in your struggles, and how can we help? So if you've heard this and you want to reach out for more help, you can email Christian at themosthighshow.com, mosthighmedia.org. Also utilize that hotline, 988. And we love you. We appreciate you listening. Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, man.
And thank you, Leslie, for running the ones and twos.
Yeah.
And thank you, Raleigh.
Raleigh, you want to say a
man.
prayer?
Representing.
Raleigh,
in
you
the
got a prayer
building.
for us? Okay, maybe later.
Peace.
So good.
All right, Raleigh, we got to go get our Coca-Cola. You ready?
Thanks, Mitch, dude.
I got bottled Coca-Cola.
There you go.
I got
That's
bottled
right.
Coca-Colas. You ready?
Yes,
All right, let's go. Chicken sandwiches and Coca-Colas.
yes.
Oh, that sounds so freaking
Yes, still has his.
I'm sorry that I have to go, Christian.
It's okay.
Oh,
I have a feeling we'll be back.
We'll be
Can
back,
I
Raleigh.
take that with me?
We're going to come back for that.
Yeah. Next time you come, I'll have one for you.
I actually have one that I can bring, but I'll
Yeah.
add it to your repertoire, and then you can use that one.
Picture?
My man, yeah, let's do a